take 5 or 6 minutes of your time to just speak a little bit about the work that I have had the privilege of doing with UNICEF. I'm going to say a few names of some incredible girls that I met. You may not know them, but I do. Umaima, Holik, Neet, Bharti, Tendai, Tendiva, Nyasha, Mashava, Iman, Seba, Shaima, Haneen, Maria, Wafa, Maram. Now, these are not just names in my posts on Instagram or Twitter or newsmakers in my travels through India, Zimbabwe, South Africa, Jordan. These are girls that live with me, that always will, as do all of the children that I have met in my 11 years of work with UNICEF. As a Goodwill Ambassador for UNICEF, along with my other colleagues, what is our job? What does a public person like me actually do? Well, we use our voices and our platform by bringing light and attention to these children that may be forgotten, so that the world sits up and takes notice. We use every opportunity and every platform that we have been given to show these children that the world has not forgotten about them, that we, all of you sitting here, care. With UNICEF, I have traveled throughout all of these places thinking that I'm going to be giving back to these kids, you know, these young ones. I'm going to be giving them inspiration, hope, or something. But at the end of it, I was the one who did all the receiving, material or non-material. So this is a diamond ring that was given to me by a girl called Umaima in Jordan at the Zatari camp that Mazoom was just talking about. This is a bracelet that was given to me in Jordan, and Her Majesty is sitting right here, Queen Rania of Jordan, who I happened to meet while I was in Amman. Seba gave this to me. And these are like 2 or 3 of the precious possessions that these girls might have, right? They don't have too many worldly possessions, but they took this off of their hands and they gave it to me. Why? She had only, both of them actually had only one request: do not forget me. And these girls looking into my eyes, not crying, not upset, just greeting me and saying, do not forget me. In fact, every image that I took away was a smile, was a happy handshake, a laugh, a hug, and an occasional Bollywood dance step, of course, because, you know, I come with that territory. You gotta do it somewhere, especially in Zatari. But I saw hope everywhere that I went. I expected despair, and I saw hope. I saw smiles where I should have seen tears. I saw joy where rightfully there should have been just sadness. I saw a determination to constantly better their lives, to empower themselves with skill sets. The long years of war, abuse, rapes that these girls have suffered did not break them. It left deep scars, definitely, but it did not define them or stop themselves from rebuilding themselves. And this is all I want to share with you, is what I took back. My takeaway from all my years of trips with UNICEF in 12 years around the world has been hope. The ability to make a rainbow within gloom, to constantly work towards building a better future. We, all of us sitting in this room, and we can acknowledge that ourselves, we live in an extremely privileged world. And it is our responsibility as privileged society to give back, because we have. We owe them, and by them I mean these kids, our support in building their future, because we can, because we have. These children are our future. We all know that. But they are not just the future of a single continent, whether it's Asia, whether it's Africa, whether it is Europe. These kids are the future of our world. We tend to forget we only have one. And these are the kids that are going to be the generation that take us forward. So now, what is our role going to be? It is to ceaselessly work towards empowering, educating, and creating opportunities, empowering them with skill sets where we can be catalysts of change and they can be catalysts of change within their societies, to help them build their own world. If possible, a safe one. If possible, a world where their dreams can become a reality. War is not an option. And if we want to build a safe world for our children, because it is them eventually who suffer the result of conflict which has been decided by adults, they are our responsibility. Yet these children dare to dream, have hope, no matter what their circumstances is, and that is truly a miracle of God. What I also know is the impact of the global goals on every girl, every child, everywhere is going to be tremendous. I have seen a girl called Sadhana, 15 years old, in a village in India, learn tailoring for survival, and then imparting that skill to a larger set of girls, therefore economically empowering numbers of women around themselves in villages in rural India. Self-efficiency works towards achieving many, many goals, be it alleviating poverty or giving much needed dignity to women, which we all know women need. This will, this determination is the unifying factor for women all over the world. Why is it more important for us to focus on girl children over the boys? Because did you know that girls are affected by conflict 2.5 times more likely than boys? They are pulled out of school more likely than boys. Equality begins here. We need to understand the whys and address them, hold their hands and tell them, let them tell their stories, change their ends to happily ever afters, for which every girl needs to be given the same opportunity as the boys. I have been witness to their ambition, to their grit, to their determinations, which is why we just have to be a helping hand, and the rest they will manage. Your investment today is money, is time, is ideas, is whatever you want to give. In return, they will build a working world. Yes, the scale is large. In fact, there is an urgent need to gather all the data regarding all the girls. This is being addressed to by our tireless volunteers, but until then, we should not give up. Once their stories are in, join me in listening to them. And just like they did for me, they will change something in you forever. Thank you for giving me your time, and I'm going to conclude just with a saying. Mahatma Gandhi said once, if we are to teach real peace in this world, and if we are to carry on a real war against war, we have to begin with the children.
There's only one you, okay? Because there's no one like you. I'm talking about the core of you, who you are inside, your values, your beliefs, your flaws. And once you understand who really that person is, you would have taken the first step in finding your unique self. And that is the best version of you. Most often, we don't allow ourselves the ability to dream beyond our imagination. We don't allow ourselves to think about the future because we are afraid of change. We are afraid to move away from what is familiar. Either that, or sometimes, we are too rigid to let our dreams evolve. Just loosen up, shake it off a little bit. Change is the only constant thing in life, and you are never too old or never too experienced to learn something new. Believe that you have everything already as your Brahmastra in your will to be able to be and achieve your dreams. Be fearless. I know I wanted to become an aeronautical engineer. What am I today? I'm an actor, I'm a singer, I'm an author, I'm a producer, I'm an artist. How did I go from becoming an engineer to all of these things? I made choices. The choices that I wanted for myself. So that is my rule number 2. Let your dreams fly. Give them wings. Be who you want to be just by being fearless. Now, opportunities. That's another important part of being fearless. They're a very funny thing, these opportunities. They don't come very often. They come far and few in between. But when they do we recognize them? Our job is to recognize them and make the most of them. I look back on all the things that I've done and I marvel at the opportunities that came my way. Miss India, Miss World, when I was in Bareilly in army school. My first film offer, my first music single, the first film I actually produced. There was never a plan, ever. More like the universe sort of guiding me towards these opportunities. All I had to do was recognize them and make sure I worked so hard that I squeezed every drop out of these opportunities. This, ladies and gentlemen, is called drive. It's called ambition. So no matter where you are in life, rule number 3 is you have never arrived enough to explore new opportunities. And there's nothing wrong with being ambitious. Ladies, listen to me. Now, for all of you guys who like everything in life, I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to have the whole cake and eat it too. Nothing wrong. I want everything. Mujhe sab kuch chahiye. And there is nothing wrong with that. As long as you're not harming someone or doing something wrong, don't be scared to want more for yourself than you ever thought you could. I want to dream of everything and I'll have everything. So rule number 4, be greedy. Be greedy for your ambitions. Be hungry for it. Don't live on someone else's benchmarks. Who can tell you who you should be? Don't let anyone or any situation dictate to you who you are and who you can be. I know it's very much easier said than done. I know that because I've done it. But fight for your dreams. Because no one else is going to fight for your dreams except you. I've turned down so many roles, opportunities because they did not fit into what I thought at that time was the right thing for me. So today my path is just my own. It belongs to no one. My failures, my successes, all of it, mine. My journey, all of it is mine. So rule number 5, do not compromise. Do not settle on your dreams. Now, who likes to fail? What? What? That you like to fail? Well, I'm not talking to you guys then. I'm talking to those guys who hate to fail. Because I hate to fail. It's really as simple as that. It takes tubs and tubs of ice cream, lots of tissues, lots of tears, lots of dramabazi, my mother, my best friends, my family, everybody making me feel better about it. But the one thing that is as certain as night and day, ladies and gentlemen, is that you will fail. It's just how it is. And there is nothing that you can do to stop that. It's what you do after that'll define where you go. When something I've invested in my heart and my soul, which I do with everything that I actually put my mind to, if that fails, I don't just wallow in self-pity. I roll myself in it. I roll around in it. I wrap myself in it, head to toe, self-pity, self-pity, self-pity. It's not a pretty sight. I can tell you that. My mother, who's sitting right here, has witnessed it many times. But then I get up, cry a little, dust myself off and dive straight back into life, because the only way to push failure aside is to move ahead. Not ignore it, analyze it and learn from it. Always remember, you will never truly enjoy success until you have tasted failure. And trust me when I tell you, it tastes like shit. Really does. So rule number 6, fail, fail, fail again, and then rise like a phoenix. Now, what is life without a little bit of a risk, right? No, I'm not an adrenaline junkie. I'm not telling you to go off roller coasters or anything. I've always believed that you have to take risks, calculated, educated risks, to evolve. Because if you've not truly explored the full extent of your possibilities, you'll always remain stagnant. People have written me off several times in my career. Sometimes they didn't agree with my choices. When I played a negative character in my film Aitraz, very early in my career, I was told I'll be a vamp and no one will cast me as a heroine. When I took on a female-centric film called Fashion, again very early on in my career, I was told that was not norm. When I signed a US TV show at the height of my film career in India, each time the risks were huge. The stakes were high and the repercussions could have been, to say not the least, career ending. Thank God they weren't, and I'm still standing in front of you. I really appreciate God. I don't know what will happen going forward, but as of now, I can say that my risks and the gamble was worth it. You know why? Because I backed up those risks with my 100%. So rule number 7, be bold and take these risks. Now, friends, family, the people you work with, the people around us are our greatest influencers in your journey to success. So you have to choose very wisely. Rule number 8, surround yourself with the right people who do not stab you in the back. Now, who's into social media? Who's on social media? Raise your hands. Yeah, we like it. I like it. We can raise our hands. Alright, it's almost everyone. Now keep your hands raised if you have ever been upset by like a bad comment that you may have read on a photograph or like on Facebook or when you've posted something. And sometimes, it's like, why do people have to be mean? Yeah, so there's a lot of you, right? Guys, please let me just tell you this. No matter what you do, someone will always be unhappy. Always. Especially in this age of social media, it's so easy for us to be confused between the voices that actually matter and the opinions of faceless people writing behind the anonymity of what the web offers. They don't matter. So rule number 9, you can never please everyone all the time. And the biggest favor that you will all do to yourselves will be to laugh at yourself, at situations. Find a moment to appreciate every single day this funny thing called life. And that's my most important rule number 10. Don't take yourself too seriously. We're not making rockets. Alright? Calm down, have fun, and just enjoy this beautiful journey that we've been put on. I do that. In the meanwhile, hi. मैं यही हूँ, मैं जा नहीं रही, 2 और rules बचे हैं. It's really not that hard, in my experience, to be kind, to be compassionate, to be human. You will never know someone else's full story, so don't be quick to judge. My mother, who's here tonight with the rest of my family, she taught me when I was very, very young that there is always someone who will be less fortunate than you. Always. So give back wherever you can. There's a huge reason I started my foundation. I lend my voice to UNICEF, Girl Up, and causes that I'm associated with, because we have one world and it's ours. And we need to heal it, and that starts with us. So that is my rule number 11. Give back. And finally, the most important one. Always remember where you came from. It's truly what defines you. So I'm a proud Indian, an army ki beti, daughter of 2 doctors with a middle-class upbringing and ginormous families, who I love on both sides. We've seen good times, we've seen bad times, we've seen hardships, we've seen pain, laughter, sadness. But that is what has made me who I am. And I wear that with pride every day and everywhere that I go. So last and definitely not the least, rule number 12, don't ever forget your roots and where you came from. I read this somewhere and kind of stuck with me, and I hope it'll stick with you. Life's journey is not to arrive at your graveside safely in a well-preserved body, but rather to skid in sideways, completely worn out, and say, holy shit, that was a ride. That is how I want to go.
So in life, there are moments when you stop and ask yourself, how did I get here? Like, why am I standing here? Well, this is definitely one of those moments for me. And I find myself going back to the beginning, back to my roots. I was born to incredible parents, amazing parents who served as doctors in the Indian Army. I was the firstborn. And as far back as I can remember, I made my parents very proud and happy 99% of the time. Okay, slight exaggerations of personal achievements are allowed from time to time, don't you think? My brother was born a few years later, and even then, nothing changed for me. We were both given equal opportunities, and I want to emphasize this. I want to really emphasize this for you because I don't think a lot of people might understand that being equal might seem very normal. But where I come from, India, and a lot of developing countries around the world, more often than not, this is an exception. It's actually a privilege. My first experience of the glaring disparity between boys and girls came at a very, very young age. I grew up in a middle-class family with extremely philanthropic parents who constantly reminded me and my brother how lucky we were and how giving back to those who were less fortunate was not a choice. It was a way of life. Simple. I was 7 or 8 years old when my parents started taking me on these visits in a traveling clinic to developing communities around and villages around the city that we lived in called Bareilly. We were packed into this ambulance, and my parents would provide free medical care to people who couldn't afford it. My job at the age of 8 was assistant pharmacist. So I would count all the medicines, put them in an envelope, and give it out to patients. And I really took my job very seriously, very seriously. But the more I went on these expeditions, the more I began to notice the simplest things that distinguished a boy from a girl or a man from a woman. For example, girls were pulled out of school when they hit puberty because they were considered ready for marriage and babies. That's 12 and 13, while boys still enjoyed their childhood. Or basic human rights such as healthcare were denied just because they were women. Let's call this whole experience trigger number 1 for me. Fast forward a few years and many, many triggers in between. Like a producer-director, for example, early on in my career, I must have been about 18 or 19, telling me that if I didn't agree to the ridiculous terms or painfully low salary in his movie, that he would just replace me. Because girls are replaceable in the entertainment business. That was a memorable one. Made me decide to make myself irreplaceable. But I think what really moved the needle for me and ultimately led me to create the Priyanka Chopra Foundation for Health and Education, and around the same time partner with UNICEF, was an encounter with my housekeeper's daughter. About 12 years ago, I came home from set early one day, and she was sitting in my library reading a book. And she must have been 8 or 9 years old, and I knew she loved reading. So I asked her, I was like, it's a weekday, why aren't you in school? And she said, oh, I don't go to school anymore. So I went and asked her mother, and I said, why isn't she in school? And her mom said that her family couldn't afford to send her and her brothers to school, so they chose the boys. The reason, she would eventually get married and it would be a waste of money. I was completely blown, and it shook me to my core. Eventually, I decided to cover the cost of her education so that she could continue to learn, because education is a basic human right. And a huge necessity, especially today. From that point on, I was determined to make a difference in as many children's lives as I could, in whatever big or small way that I could contribute. There's a really, really beautiful quote that I read recently, and I think it's absolutely appropriate to explain what I'm trying to say today. The hand that rocks the cradle, the procreator, the mother of tomorrow, a woman shapes the destiny of civilization. Such is the tragic irony of fate that a beautiful creation such as a girl child is today one of the gravest concerns facing humanity. Girls have the power to change the world. It is a fact, and yet today, girls are more likely than boys never to set foot in a classroom, despite of all the efforts and progress made over the last 2 decades. I'm just going to give you a stat, more than 15 million girls of primary school age will never learn how to read or write compared to 10 million boys. Primary school, it's the beginning of our future. Over the last 11 years, I have witnessed firsthand the incredible work that UNICEF does for children around the world, especially victims and survivors of child marriage, displacement, war, sexual violence. But there is still so much work to do. And for me, that is the fuel to my fire. The reason I'm so committed to this cause, and that is where my passion stems from, because I know that a girl's education not just empowers families, but communities and economies. A result of her education, we all do better. It's just as simple as that. As entertainers and influencers sitting in this room, I feel that it's our social responsibility to be a voice for the voiceless, which is why I applaud each and every woman in this room for being such a badass, for using your platform and your voice to contribute to change, and for ensuring that there is not even one lost generation as long as we are alive. I'd like to thank Variety and all of you for encouraging me and all of us in this room to keep going and fighting on. Thank you so much.